go right. It's time to write.
This is all gonna come out.
Hello and thanks for joining us. Today, the former France 24 presenter on the road to stardom with her role in the Me Too film She Said about the investigation into Harvey Weinstein. Angela Yeoh plays Rowena Chiu, the Hollywood producer's former assistant in the movie, directed by Maria Shrader. Weinstein is serving 23 years in prison and is currently on trial in Los Angeles for other sexual assault claims. We'll speak to Angela in just a moment, but first, here's a taster of the movie.
What is it exactly that we're looking at here?
We're looking at extreme sexual harassment in the workplace. These young women walked into what they all had reason to believe were business meetings with a producer, an employer. They were hopeful. They were expecting a serious conversation about their work or a possible project. Instead, they say he met them with threats and sexual demands. They claim assault and rape. If that can happen to Hollywood actresses, who else is it happening to?
Well, Angela Yeoh joins us from London. Hello, Angela.
Hello, Eve.
Now, congratulations. You left France 24 screens more than a decade ago for more glamorous climes. Tell us about your role in the film.
Yes, well, in the film I play Rowena Chiu, who, as you said, is a Weinstein. I felt a great sense of responsibility being part of this film. The road to storyteller as an actor isn't always as glamorous as people think, because you do see the red carpet photos, but there's obviously a lot of work that goes into getting to work in a film like this, and then working on the film itself. It was something that everyone involved in the film were aware of how important this story was and how sensitive it was to get it right, especially when dealing with real life people who have gone through a traumatic experience. So I got to meet Rowena. I was able to speak with her before filming. I had looked at all her interviews previously, and I mean, it's quite complex whether someone decides to come forward or not with their story. And when Rowena did, it had been 20 years since the assault happened, and she had kept her silence and not even told her family about it in all those years. I mean, I can go into more detail, but there was just one thing that was really keeping her from speaking out was an NDA that had been quite an unethical way to cover up what had gone wrong.
And what did Rowena say about your performance in the film?
Goodness. Yeah, I mean, I know that playing one of the 8 main characters in this film, and the other 7 are much more famous and, much more famous actors than me. I was hoping that the work that I did would be able to hold up alongside the rest of this phenomenal team. And at the same time, I knew that one person that I really wanted to make sure I had honored was Rowena. And fortunately, she felt that I did do her story justice, and found that, I mean, it's also quite difficult. How do you condense a months-long investigation into just a 2-hour film? And how do you condense a complicated story with a lot of nuance for each survivor who only gets a few minutes of screen time? So she was glad that I also was able to have a conversation about how to make sure the words were right. So it was a very collaborative effort to make sure that those words and that moment in the film where we tell Rowena's story was as truthful as.
And there does seem to be quite a lot of good feedback for the film. How do you feel like it's being received?
Yeah, we have. I was able to do the premieres in New York, London, and LA, and it has been received really well. I've had both men and women coming out of it with a lot of emotion and a desire to have to go out there and do something, or whether it's people who are inspired to become journalists, which is a really beautiful thing to hear, because I feel that journalism is also really misunderstood. And one thing I love about this film is that it does represent the real work and power of investigative journalism. I think we can only get good journalism when we really value it and resource it. And I know that there have been people who've seen the film, women who are recalling the abuse that they've experienced, and the space that this film creates, or the space that the article that Jodie Cantor and Megan Toohey, when they wrote the article, the space it creates for better conversations, can only be a good thing, I think, as a starting point to be able to start making meaningful change.
Probably one reason we're also fascinated by the story is because we are journalists. Tell us more about how you went from a France 24 reporter and presenter to an actress.
Yes, it's a bit of a strange journey because my first passion was journalism, and I see journalism for me. What was important for me was telling stories and getting at the truth, and I think I still get to do that as a creative storyteller, as an actor, is still telling stories and getting at the truth. As soon as I found out what the project was, I was like, if I can in some way serve this story that shines a light on journalism, that shines a light on the courage of these survivors, I would absolutely do my utmost to serve that story, and that I have.
Well, Angela, we're also happy for you here at France 24. Congratulations again, and we're looking forward to seeing what you're going to be doing next.
Thank you so much, Eve.
And you can see Angela in She Said in cinemas now. Well, next to a French film that's an ode to female solidarity. Blondine Lenoir's Angry Annie tells the story of a woman in the 1970s who joins an underground abortion network. It's a timely release in a year where the overturning of Roe versus Wade signifies a major step back in the collective fight for women's reproductive rights in the United States.
Jamais elles retrouveront la solidarité qu'on partage, toute cette tendresse.
On peut pas s'occuper de toutes les femmes. Je vous rappelle qu'il y a quand même plus de 200 antennes du MLAC sur tout le territoire.
Vous vous trompez de combat avec vos avortements, là.
On agit concrètement pour les femmes. Si c'est ça qui te fait problème.
Il y a des millions de femmes en France et on est en train de discuter de savoir si on doit leur donner la liberté, l'autonomie de notre corps.
Elle va avorter dans le cadre du MLAC.
She gets an illegal abortion, and when she meets the woman behind the abortion rights movement and starts to get involved with them, she begins to learn things that she didn't know about herself.
Elle a accès à des choses d'elle-même qu'elle ne soupçonnait pas. Là, tu vois, c'est l'utérus. Et comme c'est souple, ça peut pas perforer l'utérus, justement, comme les aiguilles à tricoter.
She is carried away by the story of this collective, this adventure, this fight.
Avortement ou pas, on ne parle pas de la même manière à une femme qui a les jambes écartées. Et encore, là, t'es en slip.
Je comprends.
We're now to Pakistan's entry for the Oscars, the country's first ever submission. The groundbreaking Joyland has received global accolades. It was the first Pakistani film to be shown at the Cannes Film Festival, where it won a number of prizes. But just before it was due to be released at home, the story of a transgender love affair was banned for highly objectionable material. If a film is not released in the country of origin, it can't compete for an Academy Award. The ban has now been overturned, as Emerald Maxwell reports.
Joyland tells the story of an unhappy man from a traditional Pakistani family who takes a job at a cabaret and falls in love with the trans woman who runs the show. But as well as awards, the film earned an initial ban in its home country.
We decided to fight back and try to sort of, raise as much noise as we possibly could to make sure that the film releases, because there's a long history of films being banned in Pakistan. But this is the first one that got unbanned.
The film was allowed to be released in some Pakistani states, but not Punjab, where it's set.
I'm hopeful, eternally optimistic that at some point we will release the film where it's supposed to be seen, which is its home state.
The country's film censor boards imposed cuts on Joyland as a requirement of its release.
I made sure that every time they cut out something, I did it in a very not elegant way. Because I wanted the audience who's now watching in theaters the film in Pakistan to know when something was censored. I didn't want to hide the censor. A lot of the viewers in Pakistan, when they saw the film with the censors, they were very, very offended because they took it as an insult to their intelligence and a ruining of their experience of watching the film.
Despite a rich history in South Asia, most transgender Pakistanis are forced to live on the fringes of society. The film explores this bias.
Also, it is about the patriarchal society. It's all these emotions and kind of significant feelings that we all feel as human beings, but we just don't tend to voice them because we're scared, because there's societal pressure.
In the run-up to its release, Joyland sparked protests from religious groups. Opposition to transgender people has mounted in Pakistan as they've gained hard-won rights over the last few years. Rights that are now threatened by some legislators who claim they're a sign of encroaching Western values.
And you can watch my interview with the main actress of Joyland, Sarwat Galani, from this year's Cannes Film Festival on our website at france24.com. Now we're going to leave you with a story of feminine vengeance. She Will is the first film from Franco-British director Charlotte Colbert. An ageing film star retreats to the Scottish countryside to recover from surgery. While there, mysterious forces of revenge emerge from the land where witches were burned. Thanks for watching. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Purify the soul. Would you do anything?
It would torture you.